Just talk to me, I guess, a little bit about the race, and talk to me about the Secretary of State race.
Okay, it's very exciting. We're down to 3 days, and that gives us all kinds of energy. And then when I'm in places like this, you can see the momentum and the amount of excitement. Democrats believe we are going to win. And all the things that we hear out of Washington, all the pundits and saying, it's a landslide and all that stuff, that doesn't apply here in Indiana. We're pretty notorious for ticket splitting. And I think that we've got the right issues when it comes to the Secretary of State's office. How do we grow our businesses? How do we grow our businesses providing jobs? How do we run elections cleanly and smoothly? And then, of course, when you compare, the candidates themselves, I think it's clear between myself and, for example, my Republican opponent. The choice is clear.
Talk to me, I guess, a little bit about the race in itself. What are you pushing for, and what do you hope to do once you get in?
Most important thing right now is jobs. We have been touring the state now for the last 18 months. I've met thousands of users. I've met hundreds of business owners. The number one thing that we've got here, and untold numbers of working families, number one issue is jobs. Now I'm a small business owner, and of all the candidates who are running, I'm the only one who's ever started a business, grown a business. We grew from 2 to 30 some odd. Grown a business, made a payroll, even got a chance to be impacted by tough times, but continued with that business. We didn't lay folks off because we were hitting the tough times. The most important thing is jobs. And I know how to grow a business. I know how to create jobs. It is essential that we help our other small businesses, that we have a focus on growing our small businesses so they too can provide jobs. It is our number one issue. And then, of course, it comes down to elections. How do we run our elections as cleanly and as fairly as possible? How do we make sure that as many people who are eligible to vote are able to vote? Being an advocate for our voters. But I go back to the number one issue: jobs. How do we help our small businesses create jobs?
There's some controversy against your opponent. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, my opponent, unfortunately, is under investigation by 2 special prosecutors here in the state for what is being termed voter fraud. And it's most unfortunate in a state that we push so hard to prevent voter fraud that someone who is wanting to be a candidate for that very office is now under investigation for voter fraud. What it has done is it's really brought a light to this race. This campaign for Secretary of State in a way that we haven't had in a number of years. But I think that once individuals understand that there is that I, for example, am someone who has a record of voting, who has a strong standing, someone who has created jobs, someone who has a vision and a plan for how we implement that growth of businesses, small businesses especially. I think that the decision on who to vote for is pretty clear. I personally would not want to vote for someone who is under investigation for voter fraud. The one aspect that impacts the Secretary of State's office directly, and to be the chief elections officer, to be under investigation for voter fraud, and perhaps facing indictment and a requirement to step down, in a sense, is a waste of life.
Is there other issues out there you think other than those are 2 pretty big issues? Are there some minor issues that you think that you can help out with?
Well, it comes down to the third issue here is securities. How do we get on the front side of identifying if we have individuals who are trying to defraud our investors? How do we break down the silos that separate our policing agencies? If we're able to communicate early on before cases are actually open, which is sort of the way that the system of communication goes, if we're able to communicate early before cases are open and identify we are looking at a particular individual who may be trying to defraud investors, and then another division here in the state which also is looking at individuals. If we can compare notes, we can apprehend those individuals a lot faster, start our cases a lot faster, and protect our Hoosier investors. We've got to be proactive, and I think part of this comes from having started a business, knowing that the need for being proactive. How do we grow? How do we preserve? How do we protect? And we've got to protect our investors and our investments, especially our retirement plans, our kids' college funds. All of those things are all wrapped up. We must protect our investments.
Will you be continuing the redistricting reform process that has been enacted currently?
No. Now, the redistricting actually has nothing whatsoever to do with the Secretary of State's office.
Okay.
It was something that the current Secretary of State had a passion about and began to explore. But it's not something that is directly related to the office of the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State, and by the grace of God, it will be me. I'm willing to look at ways that I might be able to talk about it with the legislators, because it's their responsibility to redraw the maps and provide what I believe are sound options, clear potential opportunities for how we redistrict. But it's not in the purview of the Office of the Secretary of State, and I really want to make sure that we focus on how we grow our businesses and provide jobs. That is the number one issue.
Okay. Are there any other innovations that you're looking at possibly enacting?
Besides job growth?
Yes. Well,
that is number one. And number two is making sure that we've got a voter advocacy board, so that we can address examples of disenfranchisement of our voters. We've got to make sure that their voices continue to be heard, that those individuals who are eligible to vote are still provided access and an ear and an advocate to make sure that if they don't have the ability to vote or challenge in voting or the required documents, how can we help? The Chief Elections Officer should be a proactive individual looking to make sure that everyone eligible to vote should be able to vote as easily as possible. It's our most fundamental human right here in America, and we've got to be able to preserve that. We must hear the voices across the state. No one should be cut off.
good.